I took my shoes off and I slammed them on the table. I said, if any of y'all want to walk in these shoes, have at it.
Oh, and that is just one of the many amazing stories we hear on this week's show when we are joined by Bass Fishing Hall of Famer, legendary Bassmaster tournament director, my longtime stage partner, the great and powerful Trip Weldon, joins me this week on...
I'm Bob Cobb from the Bassmaster. Welcome to Mercer.
Welcome one, welcome all, friends, family, freeloaders, fishing freaks, and of course you, my humpers. Happy hump day to all of you, and welcome into the Awkwardly Honest Fishing Podcast that goes by my last name, which is Mercer. This is the 253rd edition of the Mercer Podcast, and I hope wherever you're watching or listening from that life is treating you well. It is a crazy, crazy week. It is Classic Week. The busiest week of the year, literally, for me and anybody connected to the Bassmaster Classic. But it is also the greatest week of the year. And, you know, sure, I could mail it in and be like, we're not going to have a podcast this week, but I wouldn't do that to you guys. I've made a commitment to you, and I will always be here. So we have a great show here this week. But before we get into this week's show, let's talk about the 56th edition of the greatest spectacle in all of sport fishing, the Bassmaster Classic that is going down in Knoxville, Tennessee. I hope to see a bunch of you fine humpers there. If you happen to be going there, I would like to ask you a favor. Find me. I mean, I am all over the place. I start my days at takeoff. First thing in the morning, I MC that, spend the rest of the day around the expo doing Bassmaster live cast, then obviously the weigh-in in the afternoon. So if you see me at any of those, I give you free range to holler at me. Tell me you're a humper. Yell across the expo, I'm a humper, and I will try to get my way to you if I can. At the weigh-in, I'll probably can't get to you, but or during the weigh-in, I'll try to get to you afterwards, but I want to hear from my humpers because, to be honest, the only way you can get in touch with anyone in the Classic is to yell across an expo. So I give you the right. I would love to meet you guys. If you are there, swing by takeoff in the morning, find me at the expo, see me at weigh-in. I want to hear from my humpers at the 56th Bassmaster Classic because it is going to be a fun one. Knoxville is always an incredible Classic host, and I'm excited. I'm excited to be there, and to be totally honest, while you're watching this, God willing, I'm already there, and we are already deep into Classic Week. Actually, right now, I'm probably dressed in a very uncomfortable outfit because Wednesday night is Night of Champions, where we honor kind of all the year's champions and the angler of the year and that sort of thing. It's just a big celebration where everybody gets dressed up and you get in a room of people that you've known for many, many years, but you still don't recognize them because they don't have a hat or glasses on and they're wearing a suit. But it is always a fun night. The whole Classic Week is just a fun time. It is mind-numbing. I mean, it's force feeding from a fire hose. It's literally that, like, you land in Knoxville and to the moment you leave, it's just like it's coming at you, and then you stumble onto a plane the Monday after and you head home and you're like, what was that? But you are so thankful to be just a small part of it. So I hope a bunch of you are coming. It's going to be a fun week. And again, if you're there, holler at me. I will gladly try to get to you and say hello. I want to meet as many humpers as possible this week at the 56th Bassmaster Classic. So that being said, I mean, I could have ditched this show, could have said it's Classic Week, but I've made a commitment to you guys. I'm not going to do that. And not only do we have a show, but we have an incredible episode. I always try to think of someone special for the Classic Week show, and this is the perfect guest. I mean, we're talking about a human that I have literally personally spent over a month of my life standing on the Classic stage with. of course, I'm talking about Trip Weldon, Bass Fishing Hall of Famer, longtime Bassmaster tournament director, just a icon in this sport, an amazing man, an amazing historian of this sport, and an amazing friend. Now, we've had Trip on here at the past, and I mean, it's been good. But when we did this, I said, Trip, let's just have a real conversation. Let's just talk about real things. And we do. And I asked Trip to be incredibly honest, and he is incredibly honest about a lot of different topics. I think you guys are going to really enjoy this. I'm busy with the Bassmaster Classic, so I will stop talking and we'll just talk to the guest right now, because that's who you want to hear from. Without further ado, let's travel all the way to Alabama and hook up the legendary Mr. Trip Weldon. I feel like I should be singing right now. I feel reunited and it feels so good. Reunited, you knew it would. Trip Weldon, we are dancing on a freaking podcast. It is so good we had lunch together at the Martin event, but it is so good I left that meeting. I was like, man, it was just so fun catching up with you. And thank you for doing this.
Well, you're welcome. It was great to see you. It was great to see everybody at Lake Martin. I miss all my people, all my friends. I'm loving retirement, but I do miss the people. What a great event. I mean, Gunnersville speaks for itself. It was off the charts, but I thought my little old Lake Martin over here did itself well. A lot of small fish, yes, but
yeah,
man, it was competitive, and the numbers of fish they caught. If you want to take a kid and let him learn how to fish and get some bites, go to Lake Martin, especially in the next 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah, it's wild. In my opinion, the first two events, you look what happened at Gunnersville with Hank Cherry winning in such an old school, you know what I mean, swimming a grub.
Very cool. Very cool.
But I also think, like, you go to the next event at Martin, it's totally different, crazy numbers of fish, totally different size of fish. But I was I walked away equally as impressed with some of the stuff I saw. Like, whether you're a fan of forward-facing sonar or not, it is absolutely amazing to watch someone shake a bait out of a fish's mouth, a smaller fish's mouth, so that a bigger fish can bite it on forward-facing sonar, not physically looking at it. I mean,
it's totally amazing.
It's wild. So what have you been up to? Let's catch everyone up.
Well, just enjoying retirement. We have 5 grandkids. This coming Saturday, we have 3 different ballparks to go to. So we're going to do that. It'll be a marathon of ball games, but they work out in sequence. So we're looking forward to it. And
I don't think I've ever asked you this. How did you actually become a tournament director? Like, how'd you work for Bass? Because you started as, like, you were a tournament angler.
I was. So I've told this story before. I grew up and cut my teeth fishing on this lake. And I'm looking out the window at Lake Jordan, but mainly crappie fishing. I'm an only child, and my late mother and father would go up here and run a boat. We had a 4-horse Mercury motor, and my mother would sit on the front of that boat and scull with a paddle, and Daddy would sit in the back, and I'm in the middle. One reason she wanted to scull, it meant she was in the front of the boat and she got the first drop. So she caught a lot of fish, but that's where my love for fishing grew. And then I went to work for the railroad. I joined the Bass Club, the Heart of Dixie Bass Anglers in Central Alabama. And but I followed bass from those early days of my love for fishing. I've told this, you've heard it. I call the hotline every day of every tournament, and to get the results. And that was the only source of information we had until Bassmaster magazine came out a month later.
You still remember the number?
272-9530.
That is awesome. That is awesome.
In 1981, the first indoor weigh-in classic was in Montgomery. And I reached out to Harold Sharp and told him I'd like to be a camera boat driver. So it's funny, I had a Skeeter, and Harold was very protective of the sponsors, as he should be. And he said, sure, but he said, you got to park that Skeeter down the block and around the corner where it can't be seen. So, before in the morning time and in the afternoon, that's what I had to do. I drove around Phil Snow, our local sports anchor on WSFA-TV, very well-known guy here. And then I did it again in 1982. Well, in 81 and 82, I met Dewey Kendrick. Dewey was a volunteer tow vehicle driver. So fast forward to 1990, I'd been working with the railroad and they were going to move us to Florida. So I took a buyout. We took a buyout, paid off our house, best financial thing we ever did in our life. And I was working for a friend of mine at a Ranger dealership, and Dewey reached out to me looking for an assistant tournament director. And so I went and interviewed, prayed about it, and got the job. Went to work. First day was July 1 of 1991. This was prior to the Baltimore Classic. Walked in the office. We didn't have computers and all that stuff. Dewey gave me a folder about that thick. And he said, go in there to the copy machine and take a picture of everything in this folder. So that was my first official duty. And so, fast forward to the Classic, and that was KVD's first Classic. But one thing, let me say this, that I probably have never said, the learning curve for me was not steep, because as far as the tournament history, the way tournaments, were run, the procedures and all that, I knew it. I had fished a couple of bass events, just cherry picking. And so I knew all that. Now, there were a lot of ins and outs behind the scenes that, Dewey had to teach me on, but and he did, and we had a great team. Linda Cobb, Pooley taught me so much. I love that man. And Pooley and I traveled all over this country together, and it was, we had a lot of deep, deep conversations. But the whole tournament crew, we're just like a big family. And, like a traveling religion. You go here and then you go there, But anyhow, and then ESPN came along and bought Bass in 2001 and named me tournament director in 2002, January of 2002. And I did that until February of 2021, 19 years. Longest tenured tournament director in the history of Bass.
Really?
Which there have only been 3.
Yeah. Wow.
Harold Sharp, Dewey, and myself.
Wow.
So I followed in big shoes.
Yeah. What do you miss most about it? Like if I could be genie in a bottle and boom, you can go back there and experience this again. What is it?
Oh God, there are many things, Dave. I miss the people. I like being around the staff and the anglers for the most part when they're happy. In August when it's 150 degrees here, I miss being in upstate New York. I love it up there.
Yeah.
In places like that, So I don't miss the travel, and I don't miss being away from Mary and now my kids and grandkids.
Yeah.
As well, when you do these type jobs, not just in fishing, but whatever, you miss a lot of stuff. You miss a lot of ball games. You miss birthdays, important milestones in your life.
Yeah.
Fortunately, with technology, some of that pain is eased up a little bit.
Yeah. 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 FaceTime's a wonderful thing when you're on the road and, but it's still you're away. And I think that's the thing that everybody that travels says, you know what I mean? Like if they'd hurry up and invent a teleporting machine, my life would be a lot easier. If I could just at the end of, I'd do it forever. What do you think if you had to think of doing that job, What is something that people never think that comes into, like, what is something that people misunderstand about being a tournament director from the outside?
There's probably so many little things they have no clue about. First of all, it's the hours you put in. You know, I look at what I did at the Classic, and I look at what you do at the Classic, and nobody has any idea the hours. I mean, if you get 4 or 5 hours sleep, that is a bunch. But that's probably the big thing. You know, you're dealing with personalities. You're dealing with self-employed people.
Yeah.
And they're all self-employed. And they're always going to look out for number one, as they should. And so there's a lot of intricacies there that you have to deal with. So I don't know. I'm trying to think, Dave, but I mean that you know, and you know, as technology has evolved with getting the sport out to the masses, there are little things you have to deal with, you know, computer wise and all that, which I'm not the most savvy person on a computer, but it was all good.
Yeah. You got to witness some. I mean, here's one of the things that I miss that I love about you, and nobody knows about this, I think, probably other than me and you. But like, as exhausted as you are at the Classic, I miss our mornings where we got to first see each other at the Classic, because me and you, honestly, no matter what was going on, getting pulled in a million different directions, I always felt like there was this weird connection where we're like, it's the freaking Bassmaster class, like, like almost giddy about it. So you're a hardcore fan of the sport. What are some moments that you look back on and you're like, man, how awesome was it to be there for that?
Oh, man, just what you said. I mean, first of all, thank you, Lord, you and I had a great connection. We were connected at the hip. I mean, you're an angler, I'm an angler. We know what's going through the heads of these guys most times. And then just the giddiness of being there for the Classic, it puts pep in your step. There's no doubt about it. And to be there at takeoff, and then to be there probably on the stage when that last bag of fish hits the scales, and you know someone's life is changing. And you know, there's so many moments. I mean, 4 of them with KVD, but so many others when you know that their life will never be the same, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
And you know, you can almost hear their heart pounding through their chest. You know, in a sad way, Aaron Martin's never won one of those, and but he won the hearts of fishing fans across the world. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the great travesties of the sport. I mean, that was, I mean, and I don't want to get too deep into the split, but that was one of the first things at the split. It hit me one day where I was like, I'm never going to get an answer to that. I'm never going to find out if Aaron wins one, if Kevin gets 5. Like, I was in the middle of a novel, and then the last page just got ripped out.
Yeah. You know, in Pittsburgh, I mean, the agony of watching him lose those fish with the Hooters girls in the background. You know? But then, you know, on the flip side, if you watch the video, you know, I put Aaron's fish on the scales and he doesn't have enough, and I turn around and point to Kevin. And Kevin and I, you know, Kevin came down and this past April and we did a show on this KVD experience. And I told him, I said, I remember that vividly. And it's you see it in the video. He jumps about that high off the floor.
It's wild. I literally watched that video this week, doing Classic prep, and there, you know, the goal's always to make it better, and that was a video we looked at, And one of the things we looked at, because it's changed over the years, and we'll see how it all works out. You'll have to pay attention at the Classic to see how it works out because it's in discussion. But we had talked about that Classic. What was different was the hot seat was removed, and Kevin stayed in the hot seat. Traditionally, over the last dozen years or so, we've got the two guys side by side.
He was back behind us.
Yeah, but he was back behind. So there's some of us that believe like that's maybe the right way to do it, because if he's removed, that's why you get that big jump. Like, think of how many times, like when he beat Crete, when Kevin beat Crete, you can't, I mean, he's never said this to me, but you can't make me believe that the reason that he got ridiculed for his celebration being a little lackluster. But I think it was because he was standing beside his buddy who he just took his soul.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, Kevin has a big heart, so.
Yeah,
no doubt.
So we'll see at the Classic whether they're side by side or we'll have a hot seat that you can see both shots from. But
hey, looking forward to it. We're coming up. Mary and I coming up on Thursday. We'll come home on Saturday, so we'll be watching Sunday. With eager anticipation.
Today's high-tech fishing world can be a real pain in the neck, especially if you're running the wrong mounts. Beat Down Outdoors, they bring the graph to you, and they support this podcast and care enough about you to make this a short ad read. Check out Beat Down Outdoors. Now back to the show.
What do you think the most shocking moment you experienced was?
The most shocking moment? Oh, golly, Dave, you.
I mean, this
70-year-old brain is.
Welcome to the Brain Olympics trip. This is good for you, though. We're getting things to fire.
I'm drawing a blank on that one, my friend.
All right.
I may come back to you.
Okay, you're good. Did you have any moments that you felt like out of body, like, wow, is this really happening? And I can give you I can give you my two if you want, just to give you an idea to get you thinking on it. Two moments that I thought, is this really happening? Am I really here? And I was lucky to, and am lucky to stand on that stage for some amazing, amazing moments. And you're right. That moment right before, there's like a weird little second. It's a split second. I don't know if everybody notices it, but it's like the whole arena goes, and nobody's making a noise. You got two people and you can literally hit, like you said, you hear their heartbeat and you're like, I mean, if I stop to think about that moment, I actually poop my pants a little, Trip, because you think of how many eyeballs are on it and stuff. But that's an amazing moment. But the two that really stand out to me is Philadelphia, that crowd in Philadelphia. Like, that was there was anglers like that didn't want to be there. They were like, yeah, this is different kind of setup. And, it's a different part of the world that I'm used to being. And it's Philadelphia. But the crowds were like, it was, I think you know this, I grew up a fan of wrestling, still kind of maybe watch it a lot. And I've always kind of wanted to, to me, that's the ultimate show. And the more we can get our thing to be a show, and that crowd was one of those moments where I like, am I really here? Like, if I could still be there today doing weigh-ins, I'd be there, Trip. I wouldn't have left.
It was awesome. No, that was great. And, for Iaconelli to win it, being the Philly boy.
Oh.
I mean, it was off the charts. I watched, it's funny you said that because I found that on YouTube here, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks ago and watched the weigh-in. I mean, it was packed. Packed. And those fans were rowdy. And it reminded you of the 16th hole at Waste Management in the Phoenix Open. So, what was your other one?
My other one, and I'm trying to think. I think it might have been one of the few events you missed. I think you were maybe you were dealing with the diarific. I can never say that word. It makes me sound like I'm drunk.
Diverticulosis.
Yes,
abscess. And Sabine.
But it was when we were at Falcon. You weren't.
Oh,
you,
yes.
You weren't at that one, right? Like you. I think that
No,
you
I was
left.
sick.
Yeah.
That was right after. I think it's the following week, back to
Yeah.
back.
Yeah. We had a dust storm. And to me,
Oh, yeah.
I remember like literally you couldn't walk out of you get out of your vehicle and you had to have like pitch black, have your glasses on, have a buff up, have your hat. Like you couldn't, like it was. And I remember standing there being like, this is like a bass tournament in Kuwait. Like it was just, it was.
Yeah, John Stewart did that tournament.
Yeah.
It
was wild.
He finished it for me.
So those are my two moments that I thought, like, am I really? And there's, I mean, if you stop to think about it, there's countless ones, but those are the two that, like, I was like, wow, is this really? Am I really here?
My first tournament to run by myself was an invitational at Santee Cooper, and Dewey sent me. It was in the spring, and we let them go that morning. Well, the winds were forecast to get up, they did. And of course, we didn't have cell phones and all this communication. And I started getting people telling me, hey, there are 8 boats capsized out there. They're holding on to each other and, all this stuff. And I was a nervous wreck, Dave. I don't know if that's an out-of-body experience, but I can tell you it was the most nerve-wracking day I've ever had. And I've never been so glad to see every key fob, everybody checked in that afternoon. And that's our goal every day is everybody gets in safe. But that was pretty stressful.
Yeah.
And I was new at that experience. And I'll tell you a funny story about the Rojas 45 too. So I was not at that tournament. And I was back in the office, and Sarah Cummings called, and they used to sit in the trailer and then put the weights in the stages right there, scales right there. And she called me. She said, I think Mark Davis had like 38 pounds. I said, you are kidding. She said, but they say Dean Rojas has more. I said, there's no way. She said, matter of fact, he's walking up on the stage right now. I said, hold the phone receiver out the window so I can hear it. Because we didn't have cell phones or anything. She held the receiver out the window, and I heard Fish say 45 pounds and 2 ounces. And I mean, I about fell over, when I heard that weight. So that's how I learned about the 45 too.
The ladies. I think that's what Dean calls them, the ladies. He has a toast every year on the anniversary. He has a toast. You can see it on social media.
Who does that?
Dean Rojas, still to this day, he toasts the ladies on the whatever. I don't know the date, whenever that was. But yeah, every year you can see it, and that's wild. It blows me away when you think about things like that. And I've used that as an example. I used it earlier this year to talk about how far it's come in such a short period of time. Like in your time in the sport, like from you being a fan to today. Your life has been long for you, but it's still in the big picture of things in other sports. It's still a very short period of time. But in that time, you've gone from remembering the phone number you used to call to get the things to now you can cover the event better from your house probably than I can being on the water following boats around.
Yeah, let me tell you. So I started in 91, just prior to my getting there, probably a year or two. The ladies, Glenda Cobb and all those ladies, they would get the weigh slip and bring it inside, and they would manually have to total up. And you ever tried to total up? I mean, you and I have done it in our minds, pounds and ounces. It is not easy. It was not computerized. Now, when I started, it was, they would put the weight in the computer, and at the end of the day, the computer would spit out standings. But prior to that, it wasn't computerized. It was all done manually. So this is one of the little things people don't see. They would do the standings then manually. Well, they had to go at night and recheck them to make sure it was right, because Dewey and Ray Scott and Bass, they were not going to have it inaccurate. So they had to do all that. So you imagine, like an invitational was 300 anglers.
Wow.
It was always 300, 150 boats.
Wow.
And then we had flags that we used to, instead of key fobs, we issued flags. We had a little, like a clothespin on a pole with a string, and you had colored flags. You had 9 colors. You had 9 flights. You had the red flight, the green flight, the blue flight. And then you had numbered flags, and the red, they were numbered. And you would swing it out to the boat as they came by, and then they'd pull this kill switch and confirm the check-in time, and they're off for their day. And then in the afternoon, they'd turn in their flag, and the check-in person would mark them off. Or then they come in, you got a pile of flags like this. More times than not, they're soaking wet. So you got to lay them all out, sort them, get them back in order. That's every night.
Wow.
Every night. And so we had a manual scoreboard. You had to hand write, post every day. We'd post the top 20 and big fish and the leaders. And that's part of the top 20. But when we're setting up, we had 6 panels. And Dewey said, all right, you post them by state. You got Alabama and then on down. And you put Alabama and the anglers from Alabama under there. But he said, I want you to make it 6 panels evenly spaced. So you could, if you just went continuous, you could get over here and you'd have a panel and a half blank. So you had to lay all that out. I did have a computer printout, and I could count it out and mark my line where I'd go to the next panel. And then every night we'd post, and then you got to clean the board and do all that stuff. But you'd be surprised, you'd be posting, you'd have 20 people behind you waiting to see what you post. And that was our communication back then.
Wow. Are the weather calls the toughest?
Some of them are. I was, I got to where, first of all, to be a tournament director, you got to let a lot of stuff run off your back. You got to get thick skin. And it's probably not just in the fishing business. There are a lot of things, a lot of referees, a lot of officials have to have thick skin. Early in my tournament director career, if I canceled a day, I really fretted over it. Because I'm an angler, I know they want to be out there. But as time progressed, I thought, you know what? And I told anglers this, I'm not going to apologize for trying to keep you safe. I'm not going to do it. Did we miss on some? Sure. We had a day we canceled at Del Rio because they were forecasting like 40 and 50 mile an hour winds. And it was great. It would have been a great fishing day. 100 miles north of us on the interstates going through Texas, it was blowing 18-wheelers over.
Gosh.
So that's how close, we were. And there's, like I say, there's days that they probably could have gone. But again, you're trying to keep everybody safe. When I attended a funeral of an angler in Missouri, Dewey and them had gone out to run an invitational at Lake of the Ozarks. Well, this one angler had an accident during practice and drowned. Very sad, very sad. And Dewey called me and said, hey, I want you to go, because we're going to be running a tournament, go represent Bass at his service. And I did. And that was tough,
Yeah. You could tell working with you how much that, you know what I mean? How much time you put into those calls. But when you see something like that, that's the reality. But like, what is the day like after you make a call? Like, I feel like I would be pacing around the room, being like, if a storm was supposed to come, I'd be like, this storm better show up now. Oh, here it is. We made the right call. or the opposite?
Oh my! Listen, if we made the call to cancel today, we'd normally go eat breakfast. I'd walk outside and blow, wind blow. Come on, baby, blow. Everybody wants to be justified, but that's human nature, I guess.
Yeah.
So, and then days we didn't call it, when you knew it was kind of iffy. You're watching that forecast. You're looking out the window of the hotel at the trees, and you're at the end of the day, when everybody gets in, you're like, thank you, Lord.
So what do you think your best weather call was?
My best weather call, probably a couple of times in Buffalo. But those were easy calls. And you know the lay of the land there. When you pull up and the waves are crashing over those walls out there, it's a pretty easy call.
Yeah.
I mean, you see it.
Yeah. What do you think the worst was? And this isn't judging you, but I mean, if you make a call like that, sometimes it obviously is not always. I mean, you're dealing with something that literally the entire industry of people that do it are made fun of for never being correct. And that's where you're getting your information from.
There was, I don't remember what year, there was a spring tournament on Gunnersville. It was in May, and they were calling for pretty heavy to severe thunderstorms. And we called the day, canceled it based on the forecast. And it was pretty benign. It was, a few rain showers. Would have been a great day to fish. And, I know the Rick Cluns and the Greg Hackneys and Kevin Van Dams of the world, they know when the weather's pretty dicey, the fish really bite.
Yeah.
And I know they want to get out there. I mean, it's that way on Lake Martin. When I said I never met a spotted bass that didn't like adverse weather.
Yeah.
Lake Martin, when it's windy and brutal, man, them suckers will bite.
Would you hear about it from anglers the next day?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Especially after we got cell phones and got this text thread going.
It's easier.
It's easier. Yeah, keyboard warriors. You'd get the call. Hey, you'd either get a text, great call, or we need to be fishing. That's pretty much it. Let me tell you, there was one tournament where I still kind of, I don't know, regret it, but I wonder what we could have done different. And that was in Muskogee when we moved the lake. And of course, everybody played it right into Tommy Biffle's hands. But Chuck and I rode around and saw all that debris. And then we talked to Corps of Engineers. We talked to everybody under the sun. And so we did have an option to move it to a nearby lake.
Yeah.
And that's the decision we made. There's a lot of people not happy with that decision. So
Tommy loved it.
Some of them, Tommy was happy. Some of them decisions, Dave, you make them and march on.
Yeah.
Don't look back.
The wildest one I remember was, how many days did we cancel the Angler of the Year Championship? Was it 3 days?
3 days.
Greg Hackney pacing like you see a lion at the zoo. He's just in his hotel room pacing back and forth. Has to close this out and win Angler of the Year. That 3 days is ridiculous, but
oh man, any time you go up there and walking in our shoes, tournament official shoes, you just, man, I dread the wind. God, I dread the wind. Because at some juncture, you're going to have to deal with it. And it's always a judgment call.
Yeah.
Most times.
Yeah. Another thing that I don't think people notice that amazes me that you guys have to balance is the local regulations. Like bass, I mean, there's things that happen in every tournament that are just turned a blind eye to. You know what I mean? Like that, it used to be a rule you couldn't cull in Canadian water. There's tons of tournaments. Everybody's culling there. Nobody pays attention. But you'd always said with bass, we got to stick to the letter of the law. But you got to be on top of all that stuff. That had to be a full-time job in itself.
Well, yeah, local and state regulations, like you go out to California, you have to, the fish had to be hooked in the mouth. You got the film of Steve Kennedy releasing a big one that was not hooked in the mouth. And you and I shared this story week before last. We went to Detroit. State of Michigan had a rule, a law that fish had to be hooked in the mouth, and it all stems from salmon fishing, I think, and jerking, putting a treble hook above a weight and snagging it. So we're in the briefing, and this is where the pair of shoes. We're in the briefing, and I'll tell them, I say, hey, this is law, man. There's so much grumbling. We're at Carhartt headquarters. And
so to be clear, just to clarify for people that weren't there, the fish had to be hooked outside of the mouth. So if you're throwing a jerk bait, like the fish, the hook had to be inside the fish's mouth. Like you couldn't have a fish that's swadded at a jerk bait or anything. And we're in the north, and people are throwing lots of jerk baits. And so continue on.
Got to be hooked in the mouth. And people say, well, how do you define hooked in the mouth? And I said, if you close the mouth, you can't see where the hook penetrated. That was my only way to define that. And so I told them in the briefing, I said, hey, every fish to be counted as legal, according to Michigan law, has to be hooked inside the mouth. Man, there was so much going on in there. And I could feel the intensity, the pressure and the rage inside these anglers. And of course, I can get fiery too. That was when, and I've had so many people tell me that's the funniest thing they ever saw. I took my shoes off and I slammed them on the table. I said, if any of y'all want to walk in these shoes, have at it. That was the end of the briefing.
It was legendary because, as a guy who just watched it from the back of the room, you would answer the question. Like anglers would say, well, what if this situation happens? You would answer it and be like, hey, it's state law. Sorry. And they just there was one after another. And it was one of the most legendary walk-in.
We were getting nowhere. So, but
they listened.
But let me say this. So going back to what you said about sticking to the letter of the law. So I talked to Gene and Gilliland, our conservation director, and he's so connected with all the fisheries departments. And we actually got that law changed in Michigan.
Yeah,
working with the game and fish. We discussed it internally. I said we need to look at. I said there's so many little funky rules that we know. If a fish gets hooked right here with the jerk bait, we know he swatted it. Trying to bite and eat that bait, or strike that bait. And we put a rule in that says some local regulations, state regulations may differ than tournament rules and may not be reason for disqualification. So when we started going to some places like this, we would count those fish as legal fish. If the game and fish guy's there and wants to write you a ticket, that's his prerogative. But it may not get you disqualified. You may get a fine.
Yeah.
We had in North Alabama, we had a little overzealous Marine police officer up on Pickwick. And a lot of guys ran memo boats, and some of them wouldn't have numbers on there. And he would write them tickets. But we didn't disqualify him, and people say, why? He broke a law. Well, not necessarily, but the time he spent not fishing with the guy writing the ticket and the fine he has to pay, we feel like it's punishment enough.
Yeah.
So should they be running numbers? Absolutely, they should. But, it's not a competitive advantage. He's not going to get a competitive advantage by not having numbers on his boat.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I mean, a bunch of those things changed, though. Like the Michigan thing changed. Wisconsin, that Cullen line, they got Brandon Polnick for where he called over.
Yeah.
And every local tournament previous to that, they all called. Like, no, it was just a blind eye was turned to it. But that rule got changed. The Cullen in Canada rule got changed. I don't know if it was because of you guys, but that was something that was in for many, many years. Like it was 30 years old and nobody paid attention to it. And that's been changed.
Well, I'm gonna boast a little bit. The Wisconsin Minnesota thing speaks to the power of bass and the visibility of bass. He was culling in Minnesota waters. On the flip side of that, through working with Gene and working with Game and Fish and all, and the power of bass, we were able to get that law changed, and it was good for the anglers.
Yeah.
Avco not only makes incredible outdoor clothing, but they care about anglers with their 10% pledge. Avco and the Shed family donate at least 10% of the company's profits to conservation and making fishing better. Now back to the show.
What's the toughest DQ you had to give? Are they all tough?
They're all tough. There's three I'll tell you about. The first one was the Gerald Swindle deal.
Yeah.
And
I'd not have done that.
Yeah, well.
No, that's what Randy Howell said when he drove past him. I'd not have done that.
There's a lot of pressure internally from ESPN folks. And Gerald's a friend of mine. We had roomed together, and I'm the one that has to make that call, to call him and tell him. And so there's some tears shed in that one. That was tough. Right there in Birmingham, basically he lives 30 miles north of there. But like he said on stage, I didn't cheat. No, he didn't. Might not have been a good judgment. That right there was probably the impetus for the penalty box. Used to, the rules infractions would either result in loss of catch for a day, loss of catch for a tournament, permanent disqualification. That's pretty much it. Then we put a penalty box rule in. He probably would have sat for 30 minutes the next day, and that would have been, justification. Santee Cooper, man, when those guys didn't read the rules and they were letting a co-angler driving and fish are spawning everywhere. And they're sitting up there, and the co-anglers riding around. All they're doing is spotting beds. And KVD was one of them. I never those type things, Dave. I never forget. We were at a Mexican restaurant, and I get a phone call, and I started getting other phone calls. I think it was 4 anglers involved. It's KVD, Alvin Jones, Randy Howell. I can't think of the other one.
I thought it was just the 3, but you're probably right.
I had to make those phone calls, and I'll never forget. And this is one reason I have so much respect for Kevin. I called him and I said, "Were you doing this?" He said, "Yeah, I was." He said, "Is that a rule infraction?" I said, "It is." I read him the rule. And he basically said, "Well, I wasn't aware of that. I guess I can pack up and build the house." I said, "Yep." And he packed up and went to the house, took his medicine. Was at the next tournament with bells on, and, we were fine. Then the one that I still digs at my craw is the Greg Hackney thing. I love Greg Hackney to death. Love to watch him fish. I love his mental approach on fishing. And he does his own thing. And we're at Cayuga, and we have all this stupid, and I'll just say it, you can quote me for the stupid law of, we're in a glacier lake, so people would dig out places. Well, those places were not legal to fish. And we had about 8 or 10 of them. And unfortunately, Greg went in one, and he caught some fish. Well, we didn't learn about it till after the weigh-in, and he lost his catch. And I feel certain it cost him Angler of the Year.
Yeah.
And I still think back on it. What could we have done different? And the one thing that I think we could have done different was the rule I talked about earlier. State laws may not necessarily may differ with our rules. And, those little funky areas like that, if they're not marked off, I mean, how's the public going to know? And if they're not marked, you can fish them unless somebody comes out and tells you, hey, this is private property.
Yeah.
So I still hate that. I hate it for Greg. And, the very next week it happened at the Niagara River with Kevin and me in the boat as the judge.
Yeah.
And he went above the line and caught a fish. Well, the big difference there was we knew that fish, and that fish didn't count. We scratched that off his scorecard because we put a rule in there for these type situations. I said, let's put a rule in there that says if you have a questionable fish, and this could be a hooked in the mouth fish or anything, mark that fish, come in, let's discuss it. It may or may not be a legal fish, but you're not going to lose your entire catch. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was probably, I mean, there are others, but those are the three that kind of stick in your craw a lot. I lost a lot of sleep, but I'm sure they lost more sleep than I did.
Yeah. But I mean, I think also being a fan makes that tougher too, because you realize the impact. Like you said, Greg Hackney most likely would have won Angler of the Year that year. The Kevin one, that ended up the benefactor of that was Mike Iaconelli, because that was 2006. He won Angler of the Year. And if you look at the points, like if Kevin had caught one fish in that tournament, I believe he wins Angler of the Year that year, or however the math works out. But so they all come with ramifications.
The Iaconelli DQ at the Classic with the light pole. There were so many eyes on that. That was an easy call. I wasn't, I was pretty much the messenger because I've got all these higher ups in my ear. But I was asked that we did a press conference. They pulled me in the press conference, and man, they pounded me with. And it said, it's the reason you disqualified him because the American flag was on there. And Dave, this is the honest truth. I was totally oblivious to the flag. Right, wrong, or indifferent. I love my country, don't get me wrong. But he had destroyed safety equipment on that boat. And so
I don't think
the reason for that.
I don't think Ike thought of the flag. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, he can only speak for himself, but I think he just went Ike. And was he the toughest one to deal with?
There were a lot of them you had to have your head on a swivel, but Mike was just emotional.
Yeah.
And there were a couple times I put him aside. I said, "Hey, Mike, go kick a tire, do something. Just try to hold emotion down." And that, when I dealt with anglers, it was a lot of times it was not easy, and I would try. I learned as you go. I mean, with age comes wisdom, to let the emotion die down.
Yeah.
And then you can have a rational conversation with someone. So
I'm sure it takes longer for some emotions to calm down. I mean, it's not like water. It doesn't all cool at the same time.
A lot of times it depends on the situation, especially when you got two anglers against each other. And you're right here trying to figure it out. And you definitely had to let the emotion die down.
Yeah.
We had one time, we were at Rayburn, and somebody, I don't even remember the angler, somebody got on the other, he thought he came in on my fish. And so they're over there at the pairings board getting their partners for the next day. I'm the assistant tournament director. And he slaps him. Getting a fist fight.
I know who this was. He told the story on this podcast. Was he on a famous dating show at one time?
Yes, he was. That's right. You're exactly right.
Finish this out. Your story. This is great.
So I went to Dewey, and Dewey said, okay. So he told him, said, you do that again, you're going to be disqualified. And you're going to be kicked out of bass, I think. And, I was an assistant. I was just a messenger. I gave Dewey the press clippings, and he ran with it.
I'm assuming that probably would have been one of those moments where you were like, is this really happening? Am I watching grown men slap each other?
Yeah. If it was today, I'd have been like this.
And so would 35 other people.
Oh, yeah. No doubt.
Do you think, speaking of that, do you think cell phones and things like that, do you think that made your job harder or easier?
I don't know about cell phones, but I can tell you live coverage of tournaments, our phone rings a whole lot more. You get a call, hey, so-and-so took off without zipping up his live fish. He ought to be disqualified. I'm like, come on, dude. And then I remember I think we're in Pittsburgh, and Iaconelli goes in this little pocket, and right by his head is a sign that says no fishing. And we get all these calls. There was just some sign somebody put up. Those are the hardest to deal with, just stuff that people randomly put up.
Yeah.
That are not legal or whatever.
Yeah.
Just like in over there at Georgetown, South Carolina, you have all the rice plantations. Well, they put a gate up. But the worst was of those type situations by far is in Louisiana.
Oh.
And all the duck hunting stuff.
Yeah. Thus the reason that we're never in Louisiana, really.
Absolutely.
Because of that rule.
Absolutely. I mean, I had the landowner, or not the landowner, the caretaker for the landowner call me, and he was going to go have Chris Lane arrested or pull a gun on him and all that stuff. And you're not there. You can't picture in your mind exactly what's happening, what's legal, what's not legal, and trying to figure it all out. And there were numerous situations, where anglers were in waters that people thought was private land, which is just asinine to me. To me, if you can float in there, you should be able to go.
Yeah.
I'm for the anglers on that.
What about the morning all the boats froze to the trailers?
Oh, man. You talked about watching somebody fish my dock. About things people don't see. So with the classic, really with every tournament, but especially the classic, there's so much preparation that goes into it. So we're watching the forecast. We know what the weather's going to be like. We have a big meeting, and I'll be honest, I was leaning towards let's cancel the day. But we were in the room. It was, a lot of high-ranking bass people, and they said, no, we don't need to cancel the day. And thank goodness we didn't. But I convinced them, let's start late because it's going to be ice everywhere down there. I was worried about spectators slipping on the ice and all that, much to Jacob Prosnick's chagrin, because he still feels like he might have won that classic.
Yeah.
And he may very well have. But we planned for everything. We had the fire truck down there to run lake water on the ramp. We had sand trucks down there to sand the ramp because the forecast said it was going to be around single digits that morning. When I left the hotel, I had to do a live show with a local TV station. Now I left the hotel about 4:00. It was 9 degrees on the truck, on the dash. And I got down there, and first thing I had to do was go to the porta potty, and it was frozen solid. I said, I told someone, I said, I saw a toilet, a toilet glacier. I've never seen a toilet glacier in my life. And so we started launching the boats. And if you've never experienced this, I know you guys have up north. So those guys had practiced. They were off the day before But the day before that, they had practiced, their trailer bumps were wet.
Yeah.
And then it got so cold, they didn't thaw out. I mean, they didn't dry out. It got so cold, they froze, and the trailers were stuck to the boat.
Yeah.
And so they back out, and here's this boat bobbing up and down with the trailer stuck to it. And man, you talking about work. And we got some of them, they could back it down. We'd say, all right, hit like that, and they'd hit the brakes and pop off. I remember Randall Tharp, though, it was probably 45 minutes getting his off. But I'm down there and others with a fire hose shooting lake water up between the boat and the trailer trying to get it to thaw out. And it took a while. We got them off, but I'll tell you, I was exhausted.
Yeah.
That's one thing no one even thought about. Now, moving forward, we did, in years forward, we thought about it because we experienced it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you don't think that could be really a thing. Like the first time it happens to you. I remember literally the first time it ever happened to me, obviously here it happens a bunch, but like you're like, no, I've left straps on. And then you realize, no, because you can go from one side of the boat to the other and it moves. And you're like, well, no, the boat's floating. There just must be straps. But no, the trailer's actually floating with it. It's a wild situation. I remember, and I won't give the angler's name to throw him under the bus, but so the day before, I remember warning guys, hey, leave your compartments open and stuff because they'll freeze. And, and I said to several anglers, I'm like, get some antifreeze and spray it on your bunks. That'll keep it from doing that. And obviously not knowing it was going to be what it was. You know what I mean? And I remember I said to the guy, I said, I told you to get antifreeze. He goes, Mercer, I just thought that was another one of your dumb made up words. I didn't think it was a real thing. This angler's from Florida, so he's not used to that.
I wish you'd told me that about on Tuesday. We'd have been down there spraying every bump with antifreeze. But
no, it was definitely a weird, wild situation. And I mean, we had anglers in Martin that had their compartments frozen still. So it's not like it doesn't happen.
I've seen that a lot. The thing with that morning at Hartwell, the Weather Channel was there.
Yeah.
So they got their money's worth. The Weather Channel did. Hey, look at all these guys trying to get these boats, these trailers unstuck and all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a perfect week for them to be there. Do you pay attention to the rules of today, like some of the stuff that's going on in the last number of years, or do you have to put a blinder on with that?
Well, I pay attention, especially with FFS. And, it's so interesting. Different organizations have done different things. I like the coin toss. I thought that was as open and upfront and as transparent as it could be. And it actually turned out pretty neat. I was glad that Guntersville was not an FFS tournament. And I didn't think Lake Martin would be one. I was wrong. But I thought, let me back up and say, if we'd had a typical winter with a lot of rain, the creeks and all would have been muddy and a lot of the water stain. I would have thought it would have been more on moving base. But hey, Brock Mosley almost won it.
Yeah.
So close.
But you did call the winner. Like the first person you told me when I called you before the event, when we were setting up, you coming on live, and I wanted to learn a little bit of your knowledge from the lake. The first person you said was keep your eye on Fisher and Aya.
Yeah, Fisher, back before the lake went off limits, he and his partner won the Wind Creek Bass Trail with 14-something pounds in it, where he'd been taking like 11 or 12 pounds to win tournaments. And I thought, he's got this figured out. So, boy can fish.
Yeah.
He can play fish.
Seems so.
I pay attention to the rules. I mean, it's the off-limits rule when we first put it in was like a big thing and all the anglers loved it. But, man, it got to where with social media and all that stuff, I don't think anglers realized at first how hard it was going to make it on them to go work a boat show, to go to a tackle shop, to go anywhere and have to put on blinders and, earplugs. And, you're paranoid all the time. And so, personally, I'm glad they went back to the 28-day off limits. I think,
So it was angler driven to switch it in the first place, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, they wanted off limits. Yes, sir. From the time the lake was announced. But then you had that little gray area where, well, he knew the guy at the Chamber of Commerce that knew the tournament was coming, and he was able to get some information.
Yeah.
And so you had to deal with all that.
Yeah.
But, I always told the anglers, I said, look, and I'd get a call every now. I think so-and-so might have, well, you got to give me some concrete evidence. I'm not going to go chase ghosts. So if you got something, bring it to me, and then we'll certainly investigate it.
I've run a Yamaha outboard for over 30 years. It has got me home safe each and every time. If you enjoy this podcast, remember, Yamaha supports it and they care enough about you to make this ad read very short. Now back to the show.
You brought up the F word, so I'm going to ask you, I don't know if you're comfortable answering this. And this is your personal opinion. What do you think the future of forward-facing sonar should be in competition?
My personal opinion, I told you before you clicked the on button, I would be as honest as I could. I don't think it should be used in tournaments, in big-time tournaments. Now, but you got to realize, I'm speaking as a 70-year-old old hardcore bass fisherman who grew up in the 70s and 80s and 90s, old school. I was so blessed in my bass career to be around all these legendary old school anglers, the Dina Browers and Rick Cluns and Guido Hibdens, and I can go on, Basil Bacon, Larry Nixon, all those guys. But to me, the intrigue of fishing for me has always been the anticipation of the unknown. Having said that, back when I had good eyes and I fished a lot, I loved to sight fish. And so, that's kind of contradictory because that's what you're doing. You're basically sight fishing.
Yeah.
But what concerns me, and I know, listen, every organization has a tough task. You got a group of anglers over here you're trying to please, a group over here you're trying to please. You're going to tick off these or tick off these. You've got sponsors and industry people, and technology. What concerns me is what's in the lab right now.
Yeah.
What's coming down the pike. I mean, we know that these companies aren't sitting still. And so I don't know, but, I remember when when Minnesota came out with Spot Lock, man, I had some anglers just, that's unfair. That is not fair. Oh man, they bent my ear. That kind of blew over. Now that was not technology to the extent that forward-facing sonar is.
That also, it's just kind of shows the mindset of anglers. That also blew over because guess what? Every company ended up having a spot lock.
Oh, yeah.
So they were like all of a sudden, no, it's good. I like this now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The companies had to, or they'd have gone out of business.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't know. It's a dilemma, and as you told me, my timing was impeccable. Well, my timing was in God's hands because I got sick, and I was going through chemo treatments when the season was starting, and I couldn't walk from here to that wall over there without just being gassed. And I was turned 65, and I told Mary, I said, God is telling me to retire. little did I know this storm would blow up. So
God had to give you cancer to save you from forward-facing sonar, Trip.
that's a strange statement, Dave.
I'm good at those.
I feel for Chris Bowes and Lisa Talmadge and Hank Weldon and Jill and Glenn and tournament directors on other circuits that have to deal with it. And more so, dealing with social media and the negativity. And that part really gnaws at your soul. There's so much negativity out there. Just, be thankful for that we're in this sport that we all love.
Yeah.
And we get to be out in God's creation in the outdoors. And yes, competitors are going to push the limit. They're always going to try to get one leg up on you. That's what competitors do. But, if you keep your head straight and do the things the way they're supposed to be done with a positive attitude in the long run, I promise you're going to be better off.
Amen. That is the truth. It's funny because after the Olympics, I found myself thinking about, and weirdly, it came to me, and tournaments are far from perfect. I mean, I think everybody would admit that. Tournament fishing is very hard to make a living at. I would love, both of us always have been pro anglers. Like, you know what I mean? On the angler's side, see it from anglers' eyes. I'd love them to make more money and everything. But I also found myself after the Olympics thinking, maybe it's not so bad. I mean, the Bassmaster Classic is going to be on Network Fox in the afternoon. And you look at all of these other sports that the whole world peered over. And you remove hockey. And you move downhill skiing and snowboarding. And for the most part, none of them have the television exposure that bass fishing has. Like, when do you see the luge again? When do you see the Nordic combined?
How many times have you seen curling on TV?
Well, in Canada, Trip, it's funny. It's shockingly on in Canada a lot.
You gotta be kidding me.
I'm not joking. It shocks me too, but I was a curler at one point in my life. I curled for 1 year, won Rookie of the Year, and never curled again. Little known fact.
My curler, Dave Mercer. Another thing that I'm talking about social media and as well as I do, we're pro anglers, but these anglers I call it getting in a feeding frenzy. And they get in a negative train. And people don't realize the cost of putting on tournaments. I mean, I know what our budgets were from the tournament, just the tournament department. That doesn't count editorial and then the production, to make stars out of these anglers. It lets them build their own social media and their presence. Nobody has a clue about those costs. And they probably don't care. And that's okay, but don't get off on some negative tirade somewhere, about Bass or any organization when you don't know all the facts.
You promised me that when we do this, you said, I'll be honest. And Trip, you lived up to your promise. I appreciate that.
Well,
I still want to ask you whether we do it on live or we do it on this show. Can we just tune you into Gene Saratorn or whatever is Saratone, the guy from the NFL, like when they have a ruling? Can I just have you on and be like, well, here's what I feel that this ruling was made because of this?
It's funny. I'll sit there and watch a game, and especially college football, and I'm thinking, what if they did that in the bass fishing circles? So it has crossed my mind that it could happen, not with me, but
you'd
anybody.
be wonderful at it. You might be surprised. I might just call you randomly one day when something's happening. Hey, speaking of which, you had said, earlier you had said anybody that makes calls, referees and stuff like that, there's a pressure you feel you want to make the call right. And it's always, a risky situation. Do you find yourself being kinder to refs in other sports, or are you just like the rest of us and turn on them in a heartbeat?
Oh, no. Without a doubt, you have empathy for the officials. And because at the end of the day, they're trying to do the best job they can do. And, but so many times we got millions of eyeballs on them.
Yeah.
And it's tough. And, I heard a thing yesterday talking about NFL officials, and they're basically trying to officiate NASCAR on grass.
Yeah.
That's how great these athletes are, how fast they are.
It's easy to turn on them, but it also, I look at a lot of sports and I'm amazed that they got that right. Like, like anything, but baseball, you're like, he clearly looks safe to me. But then you see the replay, the slow-mo replay, and the ref got it right. The ump got it right.
Yeah, that close. The ball hits his glove and then his foot hits. I mean, it's crazy. I think more times than not on the reviews, the calls are upheld.
Yeah.
They got it right.
Yeah, it's shocking.
I tell you what drives you crazy with I don't know how much you follow college basketball, but all these, when they go to the monitor to review, it's just getting out of hand. But, they want to make the call right.
Yeah. Well, as I've always told you, your timing's impeccable. Your appearance on this show, I thank you so much for being real and honest, Trip. And I thank you for everything. It's always been a pleasure to work with you. We had so many great memories together, and ultimately, thank you for your friendship.
Well, thank you, Dave. And you asked what I miss most, and that's one of the biggest things I miss is the things we did together. Man, we witnessed some incredible moments.
We did.
It wasn't us doing it. It was seeing these amazing anglers and the things they accomplish in their lifetime, and to be there and be a part of it is really special, and to do it with you, even more special. I love you, my friend.
Love you too, Trip. What a trip. The great Trip Weldon. I asked him to be open and honest, and wow, was he ever. I cannot thank him enough for that. What a great conversation. What a great guest. And what a great way to kick off Bassmaster Classic Week. The peculiar part is that, every once in a while you're making a podcast and somebody says something and you're like, I know that is going to get clipped off and somebody on YouTube is going to make a video about it. We had a few of those moments, but I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope you did as well. And thank you, Trip. Look forward to seeing you this week at the Bassmaster Classic. I look forward to seeing all of you at the Bassmaster Classic in Knoxville, Tennessee. Once again, if you're around, make sure to chase me down and holler at me. Let me know you're a humper. I would love to meet you. But I want to remind you all this. This is our week. It is Classic Week. It is an amazing time in our sport. We're potentially crowning a brand new world champion, a repeat world champion, if Easton Fothergill has anything to say about it. It's just a great time for our sport. Let's enjoy it. I hope to see a bunch of you there. I hope you're all there in Knoxville, Tennessee, but obviously you're not all going to be there. So whether you're in Knoxville, whether you're watching it at home, enjoy it. This is our sports Super Bowl. This is a celebration of our sport, and it's going to be a fun one. Oh, and also reminder, Mercer in the morning, about an hour before every takeoff of Bassmaster Classic. No different than the Elite Series. I'll be running around doing Mercer in the morning. So check me out there if you're not going to be at the event. Even if you're at the event, well, just watch it. Even if you don't watch it, just play it every day because it helps me. And like, comment, subscribe. Do all those things that help stroke the algorithm. And I will remind you, as I always do, Everybody is fighting a battle. Whether you see it or don't, doesn't mean it's not happening. Spread kindness, spread happiness, spread a smile, and enjoy the Bassmaster Classic Week. Until next time, enjoy being, and as always, another guy I'll see this week at the Bassmaster Classic. Hey, Bob Cobb, take it away.
And subscribe, because Bob Cobb of the Bassmasters told you to. You hear?